C-Rob, you've been digging into the Dak Prescott contract situation, and this is interesting because Dak is playing at an MVP caliber level, right? We all know that. It's part of the conversation this year. It's been this huge ascension for him. He looks absolutely delightful. But that raises some issues because the Cowboys are in that spot that teams want to be in. You got to pay a lot of players. So what's the situation look like to you?
Well, I mean, if he plays at this level, when you talk to agents who deal with quarterback contracts, who have been in these rooms and drawn this up and negotiated, he's got an insane amount of leverage because they have to shrink his cap number next offseason to be able to operate, sign other deals. So the pressure is really there to get an extension done. And it's interesting to me because when I talked to somebody in Prescott's camp last, the offseason coming in, and there was this idea that like, hey, maybe they might extend Dak now. And they were just like, nah, we're good. Like, it's going to get done. There's no problem. There's no problem. It was really clear that they were reclined. They're like, we're totally fine going into this season and getting it done. And I think next offseason to 2024 in 2024. And I think it was because they knew the massive amount of leverage Dak would have at that point. There's a no trade clause. There's a no tag clause, and they got to lower his number next offseason. He's going to hold all the cards. And now he's playing at an MVP level. So to these agents, what they see is that's going to be the highest paid player in the NFL when he does, unless he dictates that he does not want that, unless he says, I'm going to do the Aaron Rodgers thing and I'm going to give money back, or take money away from myself so that you can spread it around. He's going to be the highest paid player in the NFL when he does that extension. So you're talking 55 million APY plus. I would guess it's probably going to be another 4-year deal. And he'll probably set a new record in guaranteed money in a contract. Well, short of obviously the Deshaun Watson contract. Where that, and I'd love Jory to weigh in on this, is you're also going to have CeeDee Lamb, who right now is projecting to be a player who will be in that 25 million plus APY category at wide receiver. You also have Micah Parsons, who's going to have a very good argument that he should be the highest paid defensive player in football when he comes to the table. It's really hard for teams to operate with the gargantuan quarterback contract. We have not seen one do it with the quarterback, with the wide receiver, and then also with the highest paid defensive player. So, essentially you're going to have the highest paid offensive and highest paid defensive player in the game potentially at some point for the Dallas Cowboys. But depending on where the cap goes, you could see 3 guys eating up 40% of your salary cap APY when you flatten it out and you look at over the length of the deals. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, I'd encourage all of you to go check out C-Rob's piece on this on the site, but you make great points. First of all, the Cowboys need to do something with Dak's contract because right now his cap hit is $59.5 million for the 2024 season, and that's just not feasible. And so you say, okay, what do you want to do with that? How do you factor in, like you said, CeeDee and Micah Parsons? And that's where I agree that Dak both has the leverage and also could use that leverage in a number of ways. By no means do I think that he should give them a hometown discount if he doesn't want to, because he deserves everything he's getting. And I also think that he has this opportunity in the next stretch to show like, okay, he's played extremely well ever since that Niners game. He's played really well against some teams, including Eagles, Chargers, Rams, but also against some teams that don't have as strong defenses. Now he's about to have the chance to prove himself against the Eagles, Bills, Dolphins, and Lions all in a row, which is like a stacked lineup. And so I think that while we in the media will often look at that APY, how much is he making per year? I think what Dak has the opportunity to do is say, how do I want to structure this? Do I want to make it so that I can kind of be in concert with what CeeDee and Micah are doing, so that even though I'm making the money I want, I'm having it hit in different years than they are, because I know how much he values this, both of them, and in different ways, his ability to work with CeeDee on the field and his ability to have Micah close out the games that he wants. And also, how much longer does he want to play for? What kind of flexibility does he want? The last time that they did these negotiations, Dak Prescott, his representation, Todd France, and sort of their whole team who was working on this deal were absolutely dead set on, we are not doing these 5+ year deals that the Cowboys want. The Cowboys like to have the cap flexibility to push money down the road, to restructure guys constantly. And Dak's like, no, we're doing a 4-year deal. We're going to have this ability to get back to the table. When he's 30, he'll be turning 31 next July now, but when his deal is starting to enter its final year, and as C-Rob puts really clearly in his column, no franchise tag, no trade. And so they can't just say like, oh, this is a next year problem. No, this is very much a this year problem and a problem that they have to encounter now if they want to sign the other guys, which they do. And so I think that if I'm the Cowboys, I need to be getting creative, not just on how I'm spending my money, but when I'm spending my money and how all of that works in concert.
One thing too, I'll bring up real quick for people who sit there and go, well, why doesn't he give the discount or whatever? First off, Joe Burrow didn't. Remember, they were talking about, will you do the Mahomes deal? And
I was just going to say, the Joe Burrow one is so funny because he might have showed us a blueprint on how to handle this, in which all along he said, I care about the team. I want my guys here. And so by the time the money actually hit after the Justin Herbert, no one was thinking about the fact of like, why didn't he give the discount? It just made him look like a really good guy all along because of that rhetoric. He wasn't, and it was fascinating because he didn't do it. And he just talked like this.
I noticed.
But don't you think that the public perception at large was that like he wanted his guys there? And then Justin Herbert, who has done less both statistically and certainly in the postseason than Joe Burrow, had the deal, and it's like, well, okay, well then he deserves it. So like that is honestly like a really interesting PR tactic that probably more guys could use. And again, you have the whole idea of like, is Joe Burrow then not reflecting? Like, are other guys at the position not going to be thrilled with you if you're like, I don't need everything, I'll be fine, but he took everything. Anyway, continue. Yeah. I just feel strongly about that.
Yeah, I definitely noticed because as soon as I saw the numbers, I was like, wait a minute. This is not the keep the band together contract. This is the I maxed it out contract. And, you know, probably what fans don't understand, anytime a player that is in that position to max it out shows any hint of reservation, like sort of like, man, I don't know if I want the guys in the locker room looking at me like I took every dollar I could. Typically there's an agent going, shut up, sign the deal. Like you're going to take the money. And in Dak's case, two things I would point out. Number one, he didn't take a discount the last time either. He maxed out. I mean, that 40 was like at that point, that to me was the ceiling when he got the 40 million, the 4-year, 40 million APY. And he played 3 years of very high level football on a 4th round pick contract. He like they were stealing money from him for 3 years. It wasn't like, oh, well, we developed Dak into this player or whatever. No. He came out of the box as a rookie and played at a really high level. You had success, and yet he played on a pretty cheap contract for 3 years. So now he's just making it all back on the back end. I just don't know how the Cowboys, as you said, they're going to have to get creative. The accountants, the cap people, I would say the personnel people who are going to have to draft a lot of really good talents who are cheap. You know, there's all those people are going to have to work in concert to make this all come together, because
more Deron Blands for everybody, even though he had a little bit of a run game last
I think that the personnel part of this is important because they got to draft well, right? Like if you look at the numbers, and I had the numbers run a couple of years ago, if you look at the numbers at quarterbacks that count more than 10% of the salary cap, there's no empirical data that you can't win a Super Bowl. It's about a 50-50 split on quarterbacks that are more than 10, under 10. But the thing of it here that makes this different is the other two players that are going to have to get huge money. It means the Cowboys are going to have to draft another CeeDee Lamb and another Micah Parsons. And like, that's just easier said. They're like, you can't let your quarterback walk. That is not an option. You can't just replace Dak. So you're going to have to figure out a way to sign these guys. And then that means every 2nd, 3rd, 4th round pick, they're all going to have to be home runs for a long time.
And then you're going to have to let some of them walk too, because some of those players, you know, are going to turn into good players and they're going to command a certain element of money. And you're going to have to go, no, we're just going to take the compensatory pick because we got to let some of this talent walk, even though we would like to keep it, a la T. Higgins with the Cincinnati Bengals. They'd love to keep him. They know they're not going to be able to afford it. They're going to have to let him walk and take the compensatory.
I also want to clarify that while Dak will have the ability to make his MVP case over these next couple games with all the really strong competitors, and he'll have an ability to influence the narrative, I actually don't know how much the next 4 or 5 weeks are going to influence the way that they look at his contract. Now, postseason, probably, but I think it's worth remembering when he got that 4-year, $160 million contract, he was coming off a week 5 compound fracture and dislocation of his ankle. This guy couldn't even walk. He was actually, I should say, he showed us at his press conference where he was getting his contract that he could sort of like hop a few steps. That was like his whole thing. But he got that money when he couldn't walk and he hadn't done what he's doing this year. And so I think that for the Cowboys, it's, do they want want him or not. And you could say if he can't do it in the playoffs, maybe they'll decide, well, then that's something that factors in and Jerry gets emotional about that. But if they want him, then he has the ability to command that price pretty much regardless of what happens in December. But it will definitely influence how much of a firestorm it is on social media and on the talk shows.
Let's just keep that conversation smart, as we always try to do on this show, because the last time he got a contract, everybody was yelling, well, the Cowboys don't want him. That's why it's taking so long. It's like, no, they wanted him for more years. Like that, it wasn't that they didn't want him. They wanted a longer commitment. So like, as long as we stay nuanced in that